Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a short little knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Miguron Talism, or Talism. I'm honestly not sure exactly how to pronounce it. This is a very inexpensive knife. Miguron is already known for bringing some super duper high quality to the budget knife world, but what we have here is an extremely budget knife that is still built with all of the Miguron excellence. I'll tell you right now, right at the beginning of the video, this is a $30 pocket knife, and it's worth it. This is a very good pocket knife, and I'm going to talk about it. I'll tell you why, but I'm also going to link it down below because I know that at that price, a lot of people are going to be interested, especially people who are familiar with Miguron's quality. So this will be linked down below. It does come in a couple different variations. I like this one personally. Gray G10, satin D2 blade. These are D2, right? Yeah, you can check out whatever you'd like. I'll make sure that it's linked right down below. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thank you so much to Miguron for sending this in for me to take a look at. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this knife. It's not a big knife, but it's also not a small knife. There's a couple of dimensions here that make it feel bigger than it actually is. 7 inches overall, 3 1/8 on the blade length, and 2.75 inches on the cutting edge. Let's do some size comparisons. Any custom scales you see can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others, up against the AD10 and the AD20.5. The Talism is closer to the size of the AD 20.5. 20.5 is a little longer, but you can see here the cutting edge is almost identical. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Parrot 3? Once again, we're going to be a little closer to the Parrot 3, just a 1/4 inch shy of the Parrot 3, but also cutting edge is about the same. And finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and the Hogue Deca. How's the action? Typical Miguron, very good. We have the access to the lock bar, which is very nice and scalloped, right? There's plenty of access there. Kick it over, the blade falls, flipper tab catches your finger, no double clutch. Very little encouragement required to get the blade down into the close position. And then my favorite, it's that Miguron Valona fuller. This very much looks like a shorter Valona. It is different in a couple of different ways, but it really looks like that. The flipper tab works just fine. The D10 is perfect for the flipper tab. You can light switch it, and you can kind of push button if you want to. I think it works better as a light switch, but being able to reverse flick with that fuller with pretty much whatever finger you want because the whole thing is exposed, that's just great. That works perfectly. Big fan of the ease of manipulation on this guy. As knives get smaller, for me, they generally become harder and harder to manipulate, but this guy is no problem. It doesn't matter right or left hand, however you want to deploy it, it just works. So big fan of that one, big fan of the D10 there. Let's go ahead and do carry profile thickness up against the Spyderco Parrot 3. This guy's a little thicker. Miguron does this thing where they do the lipped liners or the exposed liners, and that's fine, but they really like to put some thick G10 scales on these guys. I think we could probably knock this back a bit. I like to think that the Parrot 3, and again, you know, people always point out, those are aftermarket scales in your Parrot 3. They are the identical thickness of the stock scales, which is why I left them on here. I think knocking it back to where we're the exact same thickness as the Parrot 3 is probably a good idea, but these aren't bad. They're not like, oh my gosh, it's a brick or anything. It's just kind of a funny thickness. The Moyarl is the same way. But anyways, length and height up against, that's really the thing that makes this feel like a bigger knife than it actually is. Length and height up against the PM2 and Parrot 3. This guy's going to be just as easy to carry, if not slightly easier to carry than the Parrot 3. It is shorter and nowhere near as tall, even including the flipper tab, obviously way smaller than the PM2. Materials. We are looking at peel ply texture G10, stainless steel for the liners that have been milled out for weight reduction, by the way, and then we have a D2 blade, which is just fine, especially at this price point. Weight, I'm going to guess this weighs about 3 1/4, 3 1/2. Yeah, right in there. 3.32, which is pretty good considering the blade is 3 1/8. So nearly 1-to-1 ratio there for blade length to weight. Pretty good. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. Pretty sure we're going to need a T8 there. That's what that is. T8 for the pivot. Yep. And then usually they have T8 on the body, and they do. One screw here, likely a hidden screw underneath to hold in the rest of this. Obviously, the backspacer is not just going to use one screw. So that could be a T6, but no big deal. Pocket clip screws are T6. They're not recessed. Miguron, you should consider not only recessing this clip, nesting it into the G10, but recessing your screws using the flat ones like you do here on the body. But not a big deal. They have these set up for right or left-handed carry since the pocket clip is symmetrical, and they've milled the holes out on the other side, so that's great. Still minimal hardware, 2 screws on each side, plus the pocket clip screws and the pivot, and they're all T8, so that's awesome, right? I mean, this is easy to take apart and maintain. Couple that with the fact that the whole thing is just not expensive, and that's a recipe for a great little pocket knife. Let's go ahead and measure blade stock thickness here. That looks to be at least 125. Let's take a look. Come on now, zero out. Okay. Yeah, 125 on the dot. Okay, that's about what I expected. Move into the meat and potatoes here. This is a pretty straightforward knife, and you really don't need a professional knife reviewer to tell you that this is going to work. Ergonomically, I think it's just fine. We have classic knife handle profiling here, right? If you look at this knife handle, you could probably think of 500 pocket knives that have this exact knife handle, right? And the reason is because it works, right? The pocket clip is okay, straight, drop, and then slight bill. I would prefer that this tapers because really what you're feeling in your hand is this. And it's not bad, but you're feeling it. And the reason is because the handle is not super long. If the handle was much longer, then you wouldn't feel that part, but you do just a little bit. But it's not bad. It's not pokey. You don't have the bill going into your palm or anything like that. It works fine. It's not the worst clip that I've ever seen. The edges are chamfered, and it almost feels like they're radius. They're not. They're just chamfered, and it's done in a nice way. The peel ply texturing is a light texturing, and it will offer a little bit of traction. Not much, but a little bit to make it meaningful. There is a choke up position right here, and it's okay. It's a one knuckle position. I'm going to be honest with you. With this, like if we're going to compare this, I know this isn't necessarily or officially a sister or brother knife to the Valona, but it is very, very similar. I mean, especially when you look at the blade. The Valona, the reason that the combination of flipper tab and forward choil works is because it is a larger knife, they gave a larger choil to it on the versions that have the choil. So it doesn't really matter that there's a flipper tab there because ergonomically each finger has the appropriate amount of room. On this knife, I kind of prefer that they did not include a flipper tab so that this area was not partially blocked off by this flipper tab. If they had just left it like this, that makes it much more roomy. You can move around just a little bit, get your fingers where you want. And then I think it would have been nice if they had just carved out a little area back here to accommodate for a thumb stud, which would have fallen right about here if they changed this area up just a little bit. On a smaller knife, that's what I would prefer. Now, does that make this bad? Absolutely not. It just makes it to where if you're going to choke up, you have to be very cognizant about where your finger is, because for me, it is a one knuckle. If we're going to be safe, it's a one knuckle position, meaning you do not want to do this because then you got a little bit of meat hanging over there onto the cutting edge. You don't want to do that. You want to be about right here. So it's fine. In the standard grip, it's all right. Choked up, it's all right. The jimping, probably it would have been nice if it extended out a little further, but it's okay. Right here is just fine, and the jimping is functional. The blade, very, very nice. In fact, fit and finish all the way around on this knife is extremely good, and it's very obviously Miguron or whoever they're using for their OEM. It's just perfect. The whole knife is done, in a way they clearly care about the tolerances. The blade looks great. It's symmetrical. Both sides look exactly the same. The cutting edge is nice, very sharp, and honestly fairly thin behind the edge. Really, the taper is really, really good. We have the flat that carries out, really maximum thickness, I think probably ends about right here. So that's 65%, right? And then we've got this very nice fuller that just sort of disappears out towards the nose of the blade. Edges up here, actually they did knock those back a bit. That's nice. Satin finish looks good. I like all the other stuff that they do, where they do like, the colored PVDs, and they do their tumbled finish looks great, but their satin finish looks fine. This is obviously a very utilitarian blade shape, and it's going to work for the majority of general tasks that you would assume of a knife, right? So that's fine. We have just the generic Miguron pivot there. Looks good. It's nice that they keep everything off the blade. Again, this is D2 steel, which is, I think, perfectly fine at this price point. There's a number of steels that would work at this price point, but as far as like where I feel like D2 is appropriate, honestly, anything under $50 these days is kind of where I like to see it. And I like to see it in combination with materials like this. I don't know that there's a huge market. The reason that people get upset about D2 on more expensive knives is because they try to combine. Some companies are like, oh, is there a market for, a knife that's titanium and D2 and maybe we charge $120 for it? No. If you're going to charge $120 for a knife, people want a different steel. So for me, I like to see D2 combined with G10, injection mold plastic, micarta. We do some basic liners, right? And we do a basic build, and then it's under $50. So to see it at $30, I think is excellent. I have absolutely no problem with D2 at $30, right? Some people will still prefer a different steel, but I don't think anyone, maybe. There's always that one contrarian, right? But most people are not going to complain about D2 at $30. So I think that's just fine. Good edge retention for sure. Anyways, we have a backspacer, just a generic backspacer, nothing crazy going on there. We have, like I said, left or right-handed mounting positions for the pocket clip. Pocket clip is deep carry, or how I define it. And again, the pocket clip is okay. I'd give it a B. Let's see here. Yeah, there's really nothing else to talk about here. Then it didn't put a lanyard thing on it, but not very many people care about that. We have no shouldering on the stop pin. You can see the stop pin's in its normal place. That's fine. Doesn't need it. This knife runs on bearings. You probably could have guessed that. Absolutely no blade play up, down, left, or right. We have very good engagement with the liner lock there, and I can show you the total amount of engagement on the tang is actually a little bit more than 50% there, which is great. Miguron has always had great geometry. No lock stick at all. No pivot lash. Extremely consistent and smooth in here. The detent, very good, nice and clicky, and of course, perfect centering with no detent lash. It's $30. It's $30. It's a great knife. Honestly, there's a few knives out there, like the QSP, the Penguin, and the other one, the Puff. Is it? That's not that Puffin. There's two knives by QSP, the Parrot, the Penguin and the Parrot. Very good, right? And there's a bunch of other knives that are kind of, there's some weird like Amazon stuff that not many people have heard of. But as far as like just straightforward utilitarian, like good pocket knives, like the best of the best under 30 is fairly low competition. This is a pretty serious competitor at $30. I don't expect a lot at $30 or less. So to get this level of like Miguron perfection for $30, even if it does have a couple of quirks like the weird thickness in the scales and the pocket clip that could be a little bit better, and the flipper tab that is, in my opinion, a little bit in the way. The rest of it is so good. Those are such minor complaints, right? If your hands are much larger, you might not like this. If your hands are my size or smaller, I wear an XL glove, right? Which, guys, again, I hate to burst your bubble. Buying an XL glove doesn't mean you have XL hands. That's just how Home Depot makes you feel really manly. But that doesn't really mean anything. If your hands are about my size, and you'll be comfortable. If your hands are slightly smaller than mine, then you're going to be very comfortable on this knife. But really, this is just very, very good. I would ask Miguron, shave the thickness of these scales down a little bit on a lot of your budget stuff. It's just a little bit. If it's a bigger knife, then that's fine. But like this, it just feels like kind of just a little bit too thick. But outside of that, I don't know. I don't really have any complaints, right? This is a great knife for $30. Highly recommendable. It's going to go in my cheap knives I like playlist, which, hey, if you're on a budget and you're looking for a good knife, I have a playlist consisting of over 200 uploads. Every knife on that playlist is under $75, so make sure you check that out. This will absolutely go on that playlist, and it's also going to go on my standard, most recommended knives on this channel. So, yeah, very good. Make sure and check out the links for this knife right down in the description. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.